if I was to ask, how was 2023? Was that year that you really survived on debt? Like you were borrowing left and right and you're asking yourself, by the way, is it possible for someone to survive with debt-free? And by the way, when I say debt, I don't like overly say that debt is bad. No. See, there are two types of debts. There are debt that we call them the healthy debt. Let me just write it down, okay? There are debts we call them the healthy debts. That's for the developmental purposes, all right? And number two, we have what we call the unhealthy debt, okay? It's the debt that you take to actually feed or actually fund your consumables, fund the things that do not generate any income. So the question is this. Now, you're asking yourself, is it possible to actually survive debt-free when you refer to the unhealthy debt? Yes, it is very much possible, and that is exactly what I'm gonna share with you on this video. And I dare promise you, I ain't gonna charge you nothing watching this video. The only thing that I want is to you, yeah, exactly, you who is watching this video, to just like the video. And I know you always wonder, why do we YouTubers tell you to like the videos? By the way, it has a very good effect, because the moment you like video, the more people like the video, the more it gets suggested to people, then the more lives you can be able to change. And also subscribe down below there. Again, once you subscribe, you get to be notified whenever I upload a new good video, and I do so each and every day. All right, let's get to the point. Okay, now, and by the way, if it's your first time watching me, my name is Joseph. I talk about finance and money. Now, how can you be able to live in 2024 debt-free? When I say debt-free, I'm regarding to the unhealthy debt, okay? I'm going to take you step by step. Now, the point number one that you're supposed to understand, ask yourself, why are you taking the debt? Why? The first question you answer is, why are you taking it? Why are you taking it? Okay, if you answer the question, why are you taking it, then you can be able to change the reasons why you are taking it, or adjust the reasons why you are taking it. And I'm gonna define, this is your life here, this is your life, and my life, this is how life is. It is made up of two things. A, or number one, it is made up of the things that we call them the sustainabilities. Sustainabilities. You know, these are the things that actually sustains our lives. We have to eat, we have to drink, pay the school fees, pay the debts, pay all those kind of things. Those are the sustainabilities, just for the survival mechanisms of we human beings, okay? And then the other side is called the developmental, okay? I'm a develop, okay? Developing kind of a things, or growth, however you want to frame it. Now, these are two phases of someone's life, okay? And when it comes to the sustainabilities, is the things that you really use them to just be alive, to survive, okay? These are the things that don't develop you in any way. For example, say if you decide to be eating, meat each and every day and taking yourself the cappuccinos and matcha, we call them matcha, or what we call them, okay? Like taking those coffees and expensive outings and what have you. That has nothing to do with your growth. That has nothing to do with your development. You cannot leave that as an inheritance to your kids, okay? Now, that is a sustainability. And people strive to get what we call the developmental. But the problem is the sustainabilities actually delimit them from achieving the development. See, when I say you're making 50,000 a month, okay, 50K a month, and you're actually surviving on 40K a month, it means you're leaving 10K hanging. Now, this 10K, remember one thing, the 40,000 is what you're directing towards what? The sustainabilities. And the 10K is what you channel towards the what? The developmental. Now, this 10K is what you channel toward what you call the investment. And then this investment gives you the baby money. See, the baby money here, the baby money, aka passive income, is now what you use to actually get yourself the luxuries and what have you. Now, the point is this, you ask yourself, why are you getting the loan to survive? Okay, is it because there are two types of humans here, or two types of people here? There are people are hardly surviving. They are not even be able to do what? To achieve their sustainables. Okay, at that particular point, these guys are end up actually borrowing to top up that thing that they need for them to survive. Others are genuinely not in a position to sustain their life. And other people are not genuinely, so they end up living above their weight. For example, I had a case of a client who was making 30,000 a month, and this client was actually surviving on 35K a month. So what does it mean? You're actually eating more than what you're making. So the extra 5K that is on top there, where do you get it? You actually think of downloading those borrowing apps or lending apps and what have you. You put them in your account and then you borrow, you get the money. But remember one thing, you're going to get yourself into a very big problem. Why? This 5K, remember one thing, you're already making 30. So you cannot be able to manage to take the 5K out of the that, because initially you are not even surviving on a 30. So you're going to dig yourself a ditch time to time. We are trying to answer the question, why are you taking that loan? So if you answer the question, hey, Is it genuinely I'm not able to sustain myself? Or is it because that I'm actually punching above my weight? So now let's treat these two different individuals. There is individual one who is genuinely not in a position to sustain their life. They are to have two ways. Either they think of how they can actually make more than what they are making to sustain their life, or number two, they actually cut down the expenditures or their survival mechanism so that at least that what they are getting be enough. Am I making sense? For example, if you're making 20,000 and then you realize that your life requires 25,000, you have two ways. Is either you look for a side hustle, that's what people call it, that will make you the 5K to top up on what you're getting as from your 20K just to achieve only sustainabilities. Forget about development. At that particular stage, you cannot be able to develop in any way. Or you actually shake down some of the expenses in your life. You may decide maybe to change your schools, the kids from where they're schooling. Maybe you cannot be able to survive with that kind of a school fees. It's a bit higher than you. I know you may desire to get you them the quality education, but you can hardly sustaining it. So you shake off. Maybe that rent house that you're paying somewhere, maybe it's way above your weight. Understand and accept where you are, but don't appreciate. There's a difference between accepting and appreciating. Accepting is what makes you make a decision that is wise, and appreciating is when you say, hey, you sort of justify yourself and all those kind of things. So if you understand the reason as to why you are borrowing is because you are genuinely not able to sustain your life, two things: make more money or shake off your what? Cut off your expenses so that at least you can be able to sustain. So number two, if you realize I'm actually doing so because of my lifestyle. You see, I'm able to sustain my life, but I'm looking forward into achieving what we call the luxuries. I want to achieve the luxuries, making myself happy and all those kind of things. You see, you want to feed your emotions, how you feel, not how you think. Then it's time you work on your what? It's time you work on your character. You see, once you work on your character, it means, when I say character, I mean character with reference to finance. All right. So if you change your character toward the finance, then you're able to do something. And what are the characters that you need to change when it comes to finance? So one of the characters that you need to change, definitely number one, is about the budgeting. Remember one thing, I'll never forget to tell you this: if you want to get yourself, the fastest way to get yourself out of loan is you have to have what? You have to have what we call the budget. And I've been saying this like a million times, and I'll repeat it for the million and first time. EU budget is the language that money understands. Understand your numbers. The numbers are divided into two. You have your income on this end, and then on the other hand, you have what? Your expenses. So if you understand these two numbers, how much are you making mean? This is what is getting in, and this is what is getting out. Your income is 30,000 per month. Your expenses is 20K per month. Okay, that's a normal one, because now what you have a positive cash flow. Okay, you have a positive what? Cash flow, because you have an extra money that you can channel toward investments. Here you are making 30,000 and you're surviving on what? And 31K. What does it mean? Or let's say you're surviving on 30,000, you're making that, you're using 30. At this particular point, you have a what? You have zero cash flow. Okay, when you have zero cash flow, then it means you have nothing to channel towards investment. That case you're making 30K and you're surviving on 32K. What does it mean? You have a negative cash flow. Okay, so when you have negative cash flow, what does it mean? This is time now you think of what? Getting a loan. All right, and you're far much better when you have a zero cash flow and you borrow than when you have a negative cash flow and you're actually doing what? You're borrowing. All right, now what's my point? Number one, that thing that you're supposed to understand is understanding your numbers. Once you understand your numbers, is the primary aspect of getting yourself out of the debt and also looking forward into getting more debts to sustain yourself. Understand your numbers. I've never met anybody on earth who does not understand or know how much they make per month. Everyone knows how much they make per month. The only difference comes in when you ask somebody, okay, fine, how much do you consume? Okay, they tell you, hey, I pay this for the rent. Nobody, I've never met somebody who does not know how much they pay for their rent. So if you are committed to understanding how much you pay for your rent, why wouldn't you be committed on knowing how much you actually survive on in terms of food, how much you're actually surviving on in terms of the entertainment? Like if you want to go out and grab some few bottles of beer, how much do you do so per weekend? And by the way, is it a sustainable life? It doesn't make any sense. In one way, you're sacrificing yourself, another way, you're squandering your money. For example, let's take this case scenario. From morning till evening, you have not taken anything. Just in the name of, hey, I want to survive. I just want to, skip my breakfast and lunch and just eat supper to supper. Maybe you're observing OMAD, 1 meal a day. But now the point is this. The moment you get out, you squander like 300 Kenyan shillings. So what was the essence of you missing your lunch? Probably if you could have taken your lunch, you could have maybe used 100 or 200. You saved your 100. So don't in one end you're surviving, or in the one end you're trying as much as you can, or the other end you're squandering anything and everything that you're having out there. Number one is to understand your numbers very well. If you don't understand your numbers, you do not have the business of understanding exactly where your money is going. And if you do not understand where money is going, then you'll always be having a pen and a paper. And guess what you'll be doing? Catching up game. You catch up game. Money is always ahead of you. Have you ever heard of these kind of guys, or have you ever met them? Or are you one of them? Whereby you take a pen and paper and asking yourself, wow, last week I had like a 30 G's. I mean, I don't even know where my money is going. Like, okay, fine. Oh, okay, I sent 2,000 to, okay. 30,000 was down. Oh, okay. 5,000 was, amazing. Now after you understanding all where your money went, you've not recovered it. You've only tracked where it went. And that is not the point. See, now what you'll be doing, money will always be ahead of you, and you'll be playing what we call the catch-up game. You're supposed to do it in reverse. Which one? Having the budget before the money shows up there. Was already what we call, there's already what we call a distributed channels where that money should follow. But two, you're supposed to have what we call the emergency fund. And I know maybe I've been talking about this emergency fund, but let's just make it simpler for you to understand what I mean by the emergency fund. See, when I talk about emergency fund, okay, emergency fund, I mean that money is set aside for the unprecedented moments. Okay, for the unprecedented moments. Remember one thing, the most predictable thing about life is unpredictability. You cannot be able to predict. So having this money set aside in liquid form, this is where people get it wrong, in liquid form. Don't buy a piece of land and tell me that is an emergency fund. No, it's not. For example, say like today you do not have the cooking flour. You cannot be able to go to shopping with a title deed. You cannot be able to do that. So the emergency fund should be in cash form, in liquid form, money that you can access within a snap of a finger, okay? And now this emergency fund, I always advise get it from 3 months to 6 months. And how do you actually formulate your emergency fund? For example, let's say in a month you usually survive on 30,000, 30K. Then it means you ought to have yourself at least 90,000. Why? Say like you get fired today. Okay, it means that at least for the next 3 months you'll eat, drink, like nothing will change in your life. So it's always good to feed that basket of the emergency fund. Okay, now emergency funds actually helps you or cushions you from an emergency such like getting fired, or maybe being retrenched, or maybe some diseases or something of sort. It is good to have that money for at least 3 to 6 months. I had somebody who is actually has an emergency fund of 2 years. I told them, oh, come on, that's now too much. 2 years? I mean, that money should channel towards an investment, rather than just letting it reside somewhere. At least when you have 3 to 6 months, it's quite okay. It's quite reasonable. And the last one, but not the least, you ought to have what we call a constant review of your expenditures and lifestyle. Constant review. You have to review, your lifestyle. Review your what? Your lifestyle. At all the time and most of the times, okay? You sit down with pen and paper and ask yourself, okay, a year ago I was surviving on 30,000. Now this is where I am right now, and I'm surviving on 32,000. Okay, fine. Have I increased in terms of my income? Because the problem that people do is this. There is an increment of salary, then there is an increment of your expenditure. Another increment of the expenditure. So by the time you realize, there was a time you're being paid 10K, life was still surviving, you were still complaining. You get 30, you got to 100, now you're at 200K, but you're still complaining. So it's always good to make sure at least you understand that, hey, you should not have what we call the directly proportion. The increment of the money or the salary or the income should not be directly proportional to you increasing your lifestyle. Sometimes when you realize there is an increment in terms of the salary, remain constant in terms of the expenditure so that you realize that increment. Otherwise, if you catch up with the increment, you always be in a constant perpetual moving and complaint, and you're going to get yourself in things we call the rabbit hole. It's as simple as that. Anyway, guys, guess what? That's the end of my video, but don't forget this. My number is always on the description of this specific video. I got my email out there as well. You can shoot me an email. If you'd like to have a conversation at a private level, I offer those services, and grab that number. Let's have the conversation, all right? And for just a cup of coffee's price. For now, it's a goodbye, but don't forget, this is a place to be. Hit that like button, subscribe, and see you in the next one.